Hello, and welcome to One Spark Stories podcast, where we will hear the perspective of innovators, creators, and some unsuspecting risk takers on their journey to embrace the spark and find happiness. Now, goodness knows that things always seem to happen when you're traveling, and unfortunately, the ones that seem to deal with the brunt of that travel chaos are not the ones that caused any of the issues, which is why Eleanor Erickson is helping hospitality professionals keep their cool when the guests lose theirs. Over 2 decades of experience in hotel operations and development has well prepared her. Eleanor now works with professionals to lead their teams with more confidence, more curiosity, and more creativity. And she helps leaders in hospitality, tourism, and healthcare build engaged and empowered teams by elevating their team member experience. And today, she joins us to inspire, motivate, and teach us how to keep our cool. Eleanor, welcome to One Spark Stories. I am so excited to have you. How are you today?
I am so excited to be here, Katie. Thank you for the invitation. I will accept a spark of creation, of innovation any day of the week.
Well, you have definitely helped keep that spark moving for myself and many others because I mentioned this to you before, but your transparency in your own journey and your own story is something that not enough people really share. And so I'm excited to have you come on because I always learn something from you, and not just in the professional space, but personally. So if you don't mind just giving a quick overview of Eleanor and what we can, expect from your magic
For
today.
sure. Katie, I am Eleanor and I am living my best life. So I most recently was a hotelier and I served in hotel daily operations for over 20 years, starting at the front desk, working 3 to 11, moving my way up through the ranks, up into a regional general manager and director of operations position, all within the same company, all within the same hotels. So that's a little odd in my industry because we are often moving to the next great opportunity or the next great market. And that wasn't in the chips for me. I literally fell into hospitality and stayed there in daily operations for a long time. And I was passionate about it. I was passionate about the people I worked with. I was passionate about the market I worked in. But I decided to leave that world about 6 or 7 months ago because I'm an entrepreneur at heart. My very first paying gig was when I was about 10 or 11, and our family friend owned like the little department store in town. And they hired me to sit in a little corner of the store and teach young people how to make those ribbon barrettes. Remember when we used to weave the colorful ribbons in our barrettes?
Yes.
And so I actually probably had 2 customers on my very first entrepreneurial journey. I don't know that I actually made any money because I had to purchase the materials, but all the way back to that early time in my life, I've always felt drawn to give something of myself in unique and creative ways. Hospitality, of course, was a great way for me to do that. But now I feel called to sort of take my experience, take my vision, take my slightly disruptive thoughts and use that for the power of good on a greater platform. It's been an adventure of epic proportions so far, and I'm ready to see what happens next.
You already tackled one of my biggest questions I always love to lead with is learning about you as a child. So it sounds like you had that little, that entrepreneurial spark as a kid. Were you a very extroverted, out selling the business, or, what was your vision for future? Because I don't know about you, but for me, I didn't grow up in a very entrepreneurial home. And so I didn't know that was an option other than Girl Scout cookies.
No, listen, my father worked for the government. He was a scientist. My mother was a high school chemistry teacher. These were not people who were modeling an entrepreneurial lifestyle. In fact, they were modeling a very responsible, fiscally conservative lifestyle. And I'm not an extrovert. I play one on TV, but when it comes to sales, I really have always struggled because even though I feel like my ideas or my products are awesome, I feel like I get to the point where you have to ask for the sale, and I'm like, I don't want to bother you, but so I think that's why I'm like a serial entrepreneur, because the wheels are always turning. I'm always having these great ideas, and now I'm really in a place in my life where I have to learn how to close the sale. So it's getting back to that vulnerability and saying, this is who I am. Who can help me with this? Because I can have all the best intentions and all the best ideas in the world, but that spark will die if I can't get other people on board with it. So I was a creative child. I was a musical child. Yes, I was in Girl Scouts, although my father was a Boy Scout troop leader. So most of our vacations were doing the fun, exciting Boy Scout things, not selling the cookies. But if you looked at my cookie sheet, you would see all like family members. I was not the girl that was going out and knocking on the neighbors' doors. To me, that just felt so overwhelming. And so to this day, it still does a little bit.
I relate to that so much, because likewise, I would love when my parents would take that cookie sheet and hang it up on the wall at their work, because I knew, like, okay, all these people I know are going to buy. Then I don't have to do that door-to-door awkwardness, because it's very much not me. And I think one of those things that over time we start to learn is that obviously we're all very unique creatures. We have our strengths, and it sounds to me like your superpower is that idea, the creation of opportunity when others don't see it. And so what was it in your career that really said, you know what, you have these ideas and they are worth taking that risk, because goodness, it's a risk, and moving it on your own? What led to that?
Yeah. So as much as I loved working in my hotels here in my market, one of the most amazing opportunities I had as a hotelier was back in 2014. My brand was Hampton by Hilton. My brand created this really cool opportunity called the Ambassador Program. And they reached out into the brand, over 2,000 GMs across the country and the world at that time, and said, we see something in the high performing managers out there, and we want to bring you together, and we want to create this pay it forward program. So we are going to invite you into this program. We will spend time throughout the year doing leadership development, culture training, and then we're going to train you to go back out into the brand and pay it forward to other managers. So I was chosen to be in the inaugural class of this ambassador program, and it just blew me away from the get-go. The very first meeting we had was in Nashville, and I remember getting to the airport and looking for my ride, and it felt very much like the first episode of The Real World, right? You're like standing around like, oh, is that person getting in the van with me? Where did you come from? The entire, 2 or 3 days that I was in Nashville just blew my mind. And that launched 4 years for me of getting to go out into the brand and share my passion. We were trained in 3 tracks. One was doing one-on-one coaching with GMs. One was doing some coaching around the Standout platform with Marcus Buckingham. And then my track, they actually trained us to be facilitators. And we had a culture workshop. And so for 4 years, I traveled the US and Canada, getting to deliver this workshop to frontline employees in Hamptons everywhere. And it just ignited this thing in me that I think had just been dormant for a while, that my best work is when I'm empowering others, when I'm like getting people on the journey with me, when I am providing that feedback between the frontline teams and the people in the big offices making the big decisions. And that went away because of COVID. And I've missed it dearly every day. And I just know there's an opportunity to bring that back to life, and maybe in a different parameter, right? Like maybe I'm not working for one brand. Maybe this is really for my industry, which struggles with trying to impart messages of empowerment and engagement and culture. And how do we really dive into that when we're talking about creating, a workforce that isn't going to be suffering from 80% turnover, that is going to grow and have people walk into these like beautifully rich and wonderful and inspirational 20-year careers, and not just a 6-month gig where I needed to pay my electric bill. So it was really that moment for me in my journey that kind of got me thinking differently. So it became less about, the nuts and bolts of running a hotel, and more about how do we make the most of the people that are actually running this hotel with me.
I love that you explained that you spent 4 years doing what you loved, because a lot of times it seems like we jump into an opportunity like, oh, I could do this on my own. I could do this. But through that 4 years, you not only were able to find ways that you like to communicate that message, the ways people receive their messages, but really dial into what is needed. And I think taking more opportunities internally, if you're working for a company, is absolutely the key to unlocking that inner spark. You'll learn what you love to do. And I've learned real quick some of the things I don't love to do.
Right.
And
Yes.
it's hard. But I'm picturing when you speak about elevating and empowering people, I absolutely see that encouragement to go out, try something new, because you don't know what you don't know yet. So, how are you conveying that message to others now? It sounds like you've really started creating your own opportunity within that.
Right. So one of the cool things, and one of the really unknown things about the hospitality hotel industry in the US, is that the majority of hotels that you or I stay in are franchised operations, right? So we're in partnership with a big enterprise. So you think of the big names, Hilton, Marriott, Choice, Wyndham, all of those. A lot of their base is a franchise operation. And so we've got, in this post-pandemic world, if you can picture it, you've got sort of your enterprise over here, you've got all of your franchise hotels down here. Oh, wait, over here we have the shareholders that the enterprise has to report to. And then down here, you've got all the guests who are traveling more or traveling differently or traveling less and trying to solve for that. And there's all this white space in between these major functioning, right? Shareholders, enterprise, hotels, guests, but there's all this white space in between where we really have to rely on each other to perform our best, to make money, right? To keep happy guests, to have guests come back. And because of the pandemic, all of the resources from the enterprise have sort of been focused on revenue recovery and pipeline development, because that's what they have to report. And some of the resources for leadership development for those frontline teams has dried up. The culture messages have gone away. And so what I've been finding over the past several months or so is that even just starting in my own circle of general manager friends, how many, like the text chains that I have that are just like, how do I solve for this? How do I fix this? When was I supposed to make this change? Nobody at the brand is getting back to me. And then pushing out a little bit further into a bigger sphere and saying that that's not only happening in franchised hotels, that's happening in restaurants, that's happening in healthcare, right? The divide between the people making the decisions and the people on the front line is getting bigger and bigger. And so now the challenge for me is how do I become the feedback loop that exists between all of those? Because I consider my ideal client is that franchise hotelier. My ideal client is also that enterprise, right? It's bringing them together. And so that's where I am every day when we talk about like keeping a steady drumbeat on what you're trying to do. It's like every day I'm trying to push that sphere just a little bit further out and really connect with people who are in it. Right. Nothing frustrates me more than to read a big flashy headline about, hotel recovery is going to be so good in 2023. But then I'm in the comments of like Facebook feeds and I'm getting messages from my friends who are like, this doesn't feel like recovery. This feels like I'm ready to quit because I'm tired, exhausted, not supported, not empowered, not engaged. So it's a journey. It's a journey and trying to figure out how to become that feedback loop between all of these parts is, it doesn't look anything like I thought it was going to look when I took this first step. It's evolving. I'm learning a lot along the way, but that's the messages I'm still getting from the people who are out there doing it is we need more, we need better.
Well, and when we know more, we can do better. And
Mhm.
I think that the word that you said that is happening is this focus on recovery. And yeah, we all know. I mean, like you said, across industries, across humanity, really, we all are in that state of recovery. We're all thinking, what in the world did we just go through these last few years? This
Yeah.
time warp. Yet there is such a reactive tone to that. And
Yes.
it's really hard to say, okay, I get to be excited about how to fix what we just went through, but yet when are we going to talk about moving forward? And it's my understanding that that's a lot of what your framework is focusing on. That next way of, okay, yes, we understand there's recovery, but we actually have to also be future focused. And a lot
Yes.
of that lines in the people. So, can you tell us more about that framework that you've created?
Yes. So anytime I'm in a conversation and someone brings up the word recovery, I would challenge with the word innovation.
Mm,
Because early days of the pandemic, even my brand was saying we're never going back to normal. There's a new normal or the next normal. And that, again, that was a great buzzword, like we're working towards the next normal, but are we? Right? Are we truly innovating, or are we just trying to innovate some parts, but not others? Right. So, in training frontline team members, 22 years in a hotel, I came across my fair share of guests who were not happy. Something wasn't right. Something wasn't going well for them. And, you were trained. Anybody in customer service has been trained, like specific steps on, okay, what do you do when this person comes up to you? And it always involves, oh, thank you so much for bringing it to my attention. I hear what you're saying. I'm going to fix this problem. I will get back to you. I apologize. All of those things are very reactionary, right? So we can't just assume that every person that comes to us nowadays has a valid complaint, is going to share their concerns with us in a rational manner, right? Studies show that there are more people traveling now and people who maybe have never traveled before. They're worried about recession. They're worried about if they're going to have to go back to working in an office or if they can enjoy the lifestyle they now have. So they're traveling with that anxiety. And so the interactions that we're having with people who are unhappy are different. They're never going to go back to normal. So we can't use a reactionary framework for understanding and helping everyone. And it's happening more often. Back in 2000, when I worked a 3 to 11 shift, I might run into like one really fussy person every couple of shifts. Folks who are out there now, it might be 2 or 3 times per shift. And a lot of times it's happening in the evening. So, your manager might not be there. You might not have a coworker. So the person who's getting these is just absorbing and absorbing. So my idea is that we stop being reactionary. Don't fall into this training that we had of, thank you, I hear you, I apologize. But let's kind of flip the script and let's be proactive. And let's in that acknowledge that there is no one way to respond to every guest in every scenario. So I have this new framework I'm working on. It's called Keep Your Cool. And cool stands for curious, observant, optimistic, offering options and keeping it light. And I led with curiosity because, Katie, from working with people for a long time, when you get into a conversation with someone, you have no idea what their day was like until you're in that moment. In the hotel world, we like to say they walk in with a suitcase, but you have no idea what other baggage they're carrying.
Yes.
So when you have someone who comes to you in a moment when they're frustrated, fussy, anxious, mad, super mad, if you could flip into that moment of being, okay, I'm curious what's going on here, that sets you up for being involved in a relationship rather than just responding with this, okay, I get you, I'll fix it and moving on. Because we want people to understand that this is the new normal. This is the next normal. We have to innovate how we help people travel. We have to innovate how we help people feel better. And so by keeping your cool, start with curiosity and then be observant, because it's not just about you and that person anymore. It's the other people around you, who's in the lobby, who's absorbing that negative thing. Even when I see these like on TikTok or Instagram, everybody gets their camera out now and they're like, look at this guy blasted her at the front desk, or look at this guy screaming in the luggage claim area of the airport. Like, even when I see those, I'm automatically in a place of, oh my gosh, somebody has to deal with this. And I find myself scrolling past that stuff really quickly now because I don't want to absorb somebody else's negative energy. And then we have to think about me as the observer. I needed to say something to that clerk, like, maybe I just needed more towels. Like, but it's like, now they're fragile. Are they fragile? I don't know. How are they feeling? So we really need to start talking about being curious and observant, empathy, of course, but not just empathy for the person who's unhappy with us, but we have to have grace and empathy with ourselves. We have to have empathy with our coworkers, and we have to have empathy for the people who are just out and about. They were just having a day and walked into possibly a mess. So I think innovation is the key. We can't go back to this framework of just, absorbing, apologizing, fixing, and moving on. It's, let's really get into a moment and give our frontline team members the tools that they need to navigate every one of those conversations in a way that they feel empowered and that they don't feel shattered at the end of it.
Yeah, that is so powerful. And you said the word that I think that our society has really undervalued for a number of years. And I don't know when it happened, but asking why, that curiosity we have just shifted away from. And, there are certainly curious people, but I feel like there are so many hesitations towards exploring it, especially when you become a leader, especially when you are running a business or in charge of others. If you're leading a team, you're seen as this expert, but the secret sauce to a true expert is one that knows they never know it all.
Sure.
And so where do you think that people, especially in that frontline and hospitality scenario, can start to embrace the why, start asking why again? What are ways that they can, comfortably do so?
Yeah. And so a big deal for me, Katie, is that I feel like so hospitality is an always on industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's just never a time that you can shut the doors and say, okay, we need to brainstorm about how to ask why. We need to brainstorm about how to play, how to, we have to get it on the fly. And if you're trying to do that on the fly, but you're also, recruiting, interviewing, onboarding, if you're trying to track down your last order of towels for guest rooms, if you're trying to figure out how to create more revenue in the groups and meeting space, if you're covering a night audit shift because your night auditor called off, where is the space for us to really tackle this huge problem? It's like, we need a tourniquet, right? Like, okay, stop, pause. Well, that's not the reality. So the reality is we need people out there who are flexible, who can move around in the space. I will come to you. Let me come to you and be with you throughout the day and show you the moments where this kind of teaching, training, and empowering can happen. Because we do not have the ability to just, like I said, let's shut it down for 24 hours or a week and figure it out. So leaders who are constantly in this cycle of figuring it out are just not in a good place to bring their whole team together, right? So we were chatting earlier and I said, I feel like we need to just bring these hotel leaders together, put them on a cruise ship and send them out to sea and let them just unplug for a couple of days, right? The reality is that probably is not going to happen. But how can I identify ways to create those same teaching moments on the fly? Because one of the things is, I left the hotel industry. Some of my very good colleagues left the hotel industry, and we're promoting people into leadership and management positions who are green. And that's good. I think that's a positive thing, but we still have to give them the tools and resources they need. We can't just assume that they are going to be an amazing leader or manager if we don't give them the tools and resources they need. It's not coming from other places right now. Yeah. So, how do we build these leaders up so they can build their teams up? It is a conundrum in the always on industry. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely is. And I think that's for many industries, and many leaders would echo the same. Like, when do you expect me to shut down our operations and do all this? But it's bigger than that, by bringing somebody in that can explore that can be the outside observer and say, here's your opportunities here and now to tackle these. So it's a lot of power that you're bringing. So I want to scale back a little bit, though, kind of pull the curtains back, because you have such a passion and knowledge within the hospitality industry that you took that courageous leap into entrepreneurship. But there is another side of the empathetic lens that I really enjoy watching you expose. And that's the reality of taking a leap. Because, I think there are many days for myself where I get up and I'm going to just be blunt. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea. What I am doing is leaning on all those things I've felt and I've seen and I've noticed a need for, and trying to do good. So, where in this journey are you finding this confidence and drive? And it might not be confidence, but right, like where are you able to draw and get up each day and explore this unknown? Because I'm sure there are people listening that are like, wow, I'd like to do this, but what in the world? And full transparency, it is scary and it is hard, and there are a lot of challenges we don't see.
Yes. Yeah. And Katie, that's a great question. And I hope I don't go around the barn to get in the front door, but I've always been a morning person, and I am the type of person who wakes up like, okay, let's tackle today. So I don't have a problem getting up and sort of getting into the day. And I'm really productive for some hours, and I'm, then it gets to be like the evening time, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm done for the day. I used to joke that I couldn't do any math after 3 p.m. Right. So if in the hotel world, if somebody needed to talk about invoices or payables, I'm like, it's after 3. That'll have to wait until tomorrow. But what happens for me is it's the noises and the voices that start at about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, right? And so then I spend hours tossing and turning, because I'm doing that replay of, well, did I actually do anything today? Did I close the sale? No. Did I ask for a sale? No. Do I have money to pay my bills next week? No. And so this, then I'm lying in bed like, fortunately, I'm still at the point where I wake up the next day. I'm like, okay, I've got this. And here's some of the things that help me do that, right? So number one is, before I go to bed every day, and I've done this for years, I have a little happiness journal. And so before I go to bed, I literally just write one sentence, happiness is, and I pull something from the day and I jot it down. So even though I'm tossing and turning, I have finished my day on a positive, happy note. And I do believe, after, I think I'm in my 8th or 9th year of doing this, I really do believe there is probably science involved that helps me wake up the next day in a mindset of happiness and positivity. The second thing I did was I just gave myself a calendar. And if I could show you my office right here, it's full of like those big, full of those big notepads from like meeting rooms, right? With my big Sharpie markers and my smelly markers. And I have created like constructs for myself, right? So like social media, I knew nothing about social media when I got into this, but okay, I created a plan. And so every month I know like, okay, on this day, it's this. So I have to have some structure. And then kind of the third thing for me is to just lean on people, friends, family, even strangers sometimes. And just because I'm a person that needs feedback. And not necessarily like, I loved the way you said this, you need to work on this, but I just need like that acknowledgement, like that I exist, that I'm not just putting all this stuff out there for naught. I tell people right now, the best investment that I've made in this new career of mine was a premium subscription to Canva, because it really fast tracked
Right?
me into the creator space, which I needed to do. And sometimes I'll put something out there, I'm like, this is the bomb. And like all day I'm like scrolling and scrolling. Why? It's not getting any views. It's not getting any interaction. Nobody. And, so then at 9:30 at night, I'm back in that space of like, well, what am I really doing? So I need that feedback. And so I'm learning I have to kind of go find it. And it isn't always someone, commenting and saying, Eleanor, that's awesome. Sometimes it really is just a thumbs up. That's all I need to know that I'm not just putting the stuff out there in vain. But truly, I've had to just learn to lean on people. And for me right now, that means being vulnerable. That means, telling people that I suffer from imposter syndrome. That means telling people that I eat ramen every day right now. That means crying and getting frustrated in front of people who aren't close friends, because all of that activity I know is helping me get more clear on what I'm passionate about doing and who the right audience is. And I do believe that eventually I will get more clear about how to close a sale, how to even ask for a sale, right?
Yeah.
But so, the Internet of Things is a lovely place to be. It can feel empowering and creative, but it can also, I learned an expression yesterday called a dry phone, right? So that's when your cell phone has like no notifications on it. And that feeling that comes along, for some of us, we're like, oh, phew, I have nothing to think about right now. For some of us, I mean, that's like your validation, like this is validation in a pocket, right? And if you're not getting it over the course of a day, it can feel really disempowering. So I think that as much as my messages for frontline hospitality and tourism folks are right now, as much as the ways that I am trying to teach them to navigate this next normal, the messages I give about just trying to be out there and growing and learning in the space are just as important.
They are. And Eleanor, I have to be in the spirit of vulnerability and transparency. I have cried more since going into an entrepreneurial role and I've dabbled. I've been an independent travel agent for years. I've done kind of different marketing thing, but yet I say that, and I am at the most peaceful place in my life that I could ever be. It
1000%.
such a trippy ride. Like if there were ever, because I have this comfort in releasing things now, because I realize that not everything is for me and I cannot be everything for everybody else. And it's still overwhelming as somebody that has that strong empathetic drive. It can be a very daunting realization, but that release is powerful, letting that frustration out, letting go of all of that imposter, because, we've talked about this before. Just when you think that this one person has it all figured out, you have an offline conversation and they're like, everything's falling apart. My life is in shambles. What do I do? And this is why we have to have these conversations and why we have to share the truth, the other side of it. And it's really why I celebrate you, among many reasons. And I'm going to pull one word that you said that I appreciate your mentioning, and that's feedback, because we have this idea that feedback is hurtful and it's damaging to my reputation, and you don't think I do a good job. But that feedback, the positive and the ones that might sting, are absolutely where we grow. So I want to continue to celebrate you, but I want to flip the script and ask you, what is something, Eleanor, that we can celebrate for you? What is something you're proud of that you've really, what we need to toot that horn and throw the confetti for you about?
Oh, Katie, I don't like to toot my own horn.
Nobody ever does. That's why I'm doing it.
Right? So think if just answering this question today in this moment where I'm feeling very uncomfortable, I would love to celebrate the fact that 6 or 7 months into my journey, I have learned to let go of some preconceived notion about what my life was going to be like. It was very scary to step away from, a W-2 job that I'd had for 22 years. I have met the most incredible people on this journey. And the thing that I would love to celebrate is that I've learned to say yes to every opportunity. That wasn't always easy for me. When you're living in a place of comfort, you don't have to say yes to every opportunity. We talked earlier about how I did say yes to this great big opportunity back in 2014 and how much that has sort of steered me in the direction I am in now. And so right now I celebrate the fact that I say yes to everything. Some of them turn out to be great opportunities. Some of them are just learning opportunities, but let's celebrate that because it's not always easy to say yes, especially when you're out of your comfort zone. So let's just jump. Let's just go.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you said sometimes they're lessons, because I'm going to kind of pull the opposite here. The last couple months have been months of no for me, because I had gotten to that point where I was saying yes. And then over time, I got so many of those lessons where I was like, oh, wait a minute, I'm seeing this. And I think you have seen that opportunity to continue to learn and grow. And so I applaud you absolutely for that, because it's in those lessons. Oh, I just love the way you phrase that. Because even when, even whether you say yes, no, whatever outlook you take on something, there is always a lesson and awareness. And, whether that means that we learn that you can put peanut butter in ramen and make a fancy pad thai. Hello. Yes, please. Or it's something more along those front lines and empowering and engaging. I just think there is so much yes and lesson to be learned. So thank you, Eleanor. Where can people connect with you?
Sure. Well, the best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn, Eleanor Richmond Erickson. I also have a website, eleanorerickson.com. So another great way to connect with me. And you can also subscribe to my newsletter, which comes out monthly, so that you can just follow the journey with me. Ask any question you want. Ask me anything, right? That's my life right now. And I love to hear from people outside of hotels, right? Yeah, my strength is in hotels, but gosh, I've learned so much about how the same things that I'm feeling and learning and doing apply to restaurants, healthcare, senior living, attractions, cruise ships, all of that stuff. There's a richness of innovation happening. And I sort of just want to keep that going and hold some people accountable for it so that this industry grows, that frontline employees are empowered and engaged. And so that doesn't, do not hesitate to contact me if you're not a hotel general manager. I promise we will find something to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I will make sure to include links in the show notes so people can easily track you down. I appreciate you. One final question. What is something you want people to unlearn?
To unlearn? Yeah. So I want people to unlearn the phrase, the customer is always right. And that's not easy. And there are people who won't agree with me, but I think it's important that we unlearn that so that we can relearn how to support customers and guests, our businesses and ourselves in meaningful and powerful ways.
Oh, I love that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much,
Thanks,
Eleanor.
Katie.
I appreciate you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you. Go light some sparks.
Did you know that you burn more calories sleeping than you do watching TV? Wow.
Later, Tater.